Madam Secretary, once again, thanks so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you.
Congratulations on your award.
Thank you. I'm very excited. I didn't think my golf game would ever win me anything, so this is pretty good.
I don't know. I heard you're pretty good. You have a really good handicap, I'm told.
Well, I'm playing these days to 11, 12, which for somebody who started at the age of 50 is not too bad. So I'm enjoying it a lot. That's the most important.
Well, I was reading you started back in 2006?
Yes,
you were
when I was
Secretary
secretary. Went on vacation that summer after I became Secretary of State. And went with my cousin. Her husband gave her lessons, gave me buddy lessons. I loved it, and it's been my sport ever since. I'd been through several sports. I was a competitive figure skater as a kid, and then a tennis player. So golf, I really have the golf bug now, though.
I was going to ask you, how would you describe the bug, and how long did it take for you to get
it? It took one drive off of a driver in my first golf camp that went up and long to become really bitten by the bug. But I just think it's a game that challenges you every day. It challenges your patience every day. I decided I had one goal, which was to play well enough to play any course that I wanted to be able to play. And I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Is it an escape for you as well?
It's a transporting experience. It's not exactly relaxing to try to make that ball go where you want it to go. But you really can't think about anything else when you're out there, and I think that's maybe one reason. And I also think that when I was secretary, I was rarely outside. People forget that you're kind of always, you have security detail, you're always in a car, and then you go right to a room. And so to be able to wander out and find my ball was really, really quite fulfilling.
Yeah, not that you had a lot of time when you were traveling around the world, but did you ever have the chance to play overseas?
I had no chance to play overseas, but I would use it as kind of recovery sometimes. So if I came back from a long trip, let's say to Asia, I would ask my driver to meet me at the course. We landed at Andrews Air Force Base. I'd go to the course, I would hit balls for a little bit, and it would turn my clock around. So I didn't have much time, but it was fun. Even if I only had 40 minutes, it was fun to get out there.
Madam Secretary, what does this award mean to you?
Well, this award means a lot to me. It's a great honor. A lot of people on that list that I admire, people like Barbara Nicholas, who has been a friend, of course, Jack's, as he would say, better half. The last one was my good friend, former President George W. Bush, and so it's just a wonderful list of people who really play golf beautifully and a lot of people who love the game, and so it's very exciting. And of course, to be able to do it as a part of the civic culture, the dedication to a community that this represents. The United States of America is unusual in that we have these wonderful civic cultural societies. When de Tocqueville was here in 1835, he said we had these voluntary associations just to do good. And today we would know them as Red Cross and Boys and Girls Clubs and Rotary Clubs. And so to be a part of that kind of civic culture is also very important.
You played in the Pro-Am. How'd you do?
I played in the Pro-Am. I played pretty well. I had never seen the South course of Firestone except on TV. And it was, I had a few pars for net birdie, so I was pretty pleased. I got to play with Jay Haas, who's such a gentleman and such a great golfing family. So it was a lot of fun. And I made a couple of really good pars, so I was happy.
You've made a few hole-in-ones in your career, have you
I've
not?
had a couple of hole-in-ones. I had one at Notre Dame, just before the Notre Dame-Michigan State football game. We were all running a little bit late. I almost didn't play the next hole, and I had a hole-in-one. And then back on my home course at Stanford, and so that was very exciting to see those go in. It's pretty amazing.
I'm the last of my friends growing up who has not played golf yet, or have not caught the bug. What would you say to people like me who want to get out there? What advice would you give us?
Well, I would say to people like you, go and do it. You are going to love it, particularly if you love sports. But learn to be a good putter, because early on I learned that even if it took me 8 shots to get to the green, I could always 2-putt, and it always felt good at the end of a hole. So it's a wonderful game for friendships. It's a wonderful game for traveling to beautiful places. And increasingly, it's a game that is trying to be more inclusive, trying to bring people from a variety of stations in life, and in many cases, like this tournament, it's able to support many good causes. And so it's a wonderful sport on a lot of a lot of levels.
Madam Secretary, I'm so honored to have the chance to speak to you. I would like to ask you some questions about some things going on
Of course,
in the world right
of
now
course.
from your perspective. When you look at Ukraine and our policy there, in your mind, what are we doing right? What could we be doing better?
Well, we certainly are being enormously supportive of Ukraine, and well, we should be, because Vladimir Putin, who I knew well, has challenged the international system in ways that I think we'd never thought we would see again after World War II. A large country simply invading its neighbor and trying to liquidate Ukraine, which is really what he had tried to do. Fortunately, the Ukrainians are among the world's bravest people. They are fighting for their freedom. And in a sense, they're fighting for our freedom, because an international system that allows that to happen is not going to be a very safe and prosperous one. I think what we've done in terms of military support, military equipment, military training, well before this happened, is really important. I wish we'd maybe started a little earlier, before the war began. And certainly, we need to make sure that we give the Ukrainians everything they need to hold off the Russian offensive. The Russians are going to have some successes in the eastern part of the Ukraine, because it's an easier take for them than what they tried to do initially in taking the capital city of Kyiv, where they failed. But we just have to stay with them and try to help the brave people of Ukraine.
What's the best possible outcome at this point for the people of Ukraine?
Well, the best possible outcome is that Vladimir Putin's ambitions to reestablish the Russian Empire, and be very clear, it's not the Soviet Union, it's the Russian Empire. His heroes and heroines are Peter the Great and Catherine the Great and Alexander II. And so frustrating that that desire to extinguish Ukraine as an independent country, that's what has to be defeated. And I think with the Ukrainians' bravery and their dedication and the help of the free world, we will be able to do that. I also think that it is amazing the degree to which the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, is expanding. I never thought I'd live to see the day when Finland and Sweden wanted to be members of NATO. Somebody said that Vladimir Putin has managed to get rid of German pacifism and Swedish neutrality all in one fell swoop. And so he's paying a price. We should continue to make him pay a price.
Based on your answer, I think I know the answer to this, but you, of course, have dealt with Vladimir Putin many times. Are you surprised at the way he's acting?
I'm not surprised that he had this ambition to reestablish the Russian Empire. And understand, if there's an independent Ukraine, there means the Russian Empire really doesn't exist. You have to extinguish Ukraine. I knew he had the ambition. He once told me that Russia was only great when it was ruled by great men like Peter the Great and Alexander II. And so the ambition was there. The real question is, what made that ambition suddenly an operational plan?
What do you say to something like that, Madam Secretary?
You simply nod politely because you're Secretary of State and you can't say anything rude. But I remember thinking at the time, really? Do you think you're Peter the Great? But I do think that what maybe turned that ambition, that ambition into an operational plan, is maybe a little sense that maybe the West was weak after the way we left Afghanistan, maybe a sense that Ukraine was not as strong as it has turned out to be, and he certainly overestimated the capabilities of his armed forces. And some say that 2 years of isolation during COVID sent him deep into a place psychologically where he really believed he could act on that ambition to reestablish the Russian Empire. But it's sad. It's especially sad for the people of Ukraine. It's sad for Europe, and it's sad for the people of Russia, who this one man, he's dragged them into a terrible war.
Let me ask you about gas prices from a global standpoint. People are pointing fingers at everybody. This is why gas is so high. This is why. As someone who has seen the world, continues to see the world from a global perspective, what are some of the factors going into this?
Well, I will tell you, oil went to $147 a barrel when I was Secretary of State, and there is nothing that warps an economy and diplomacy like that. We had food prices go skyrocketing because transportation costs for food. So it's a very dangerous thing when this happens. And look, there's no doubt that Ukraine's war, the war in Ukraine, has added to gas prices. But inflation was a problem before Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine. I happen to think that government spending, overstimulating the economy, was a problem. And certainly, we have to be very careful that in the transition, because of climate change, the transition that we want to make to a less carbon-intensive economy, so we want to get off hydrocarbons to the degree we can, but that's going to take a long time. And I would hope that we would go back to encouraging the development of our resources here in the United States and on the North American platform, allow the permitting and the drilling of those resources here in the United States. Because would you rather our oil and gas come from Russia and Iran and Saudi Arabia, or would you rather it come from the North American platform, Canada, the United States, and Mexico? I think we need a change in policy.
Gas prices, $147 a barrel at one point when you were Secretary of State. The prices eventually went down. Are we still in a what goes up must come down world when it comes to gas prices?
Well, eventually it may come down. And I'm no economist, but I will tell you what my economist friends are concerned about. One thing that will bring it down is if the economy slows and we go into recession. And that's not a pretty picture either. And so I think that we need to find a way to unleash the potential of American oil and gas. That will, over time, help to bring prices down. And we probably need to be a little bit more disciplined in our government spending as well.
Madam Secretary, of course, millions of Americans are watching the January 6th public hearings. As you watch, what's your take on what's going on?
Well, I'm very saddened. And I said on that day that it was a stain on our democracy, those events at the Capitol. I think one of the most important things is the peaceful transfer of power. I would have much preferred that there was an immediate recognition that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had been duly elected by the American people, and that we hadn't gone through that whole January 6th turmoil. I will say this, I have been impressed by what those on the committee are doing to bring to light a lot of what happened. We all need to step back and take a breath, and we do need to thank Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and Mike Pence that our institutions held on that day. That in fact, they walked back into that Capitol, they certified that election in an actually rather boring way, almost as if nothing else had happened. When I would go around the world, I would tell people around the world, get your institutions right and individuals matter less. We just saw that in what happened to us, but it was a very sad thing. And those who tried to cast a pall over those elections, those who tried to say that those elections were not legitimate, those who said that there was fraud when the Attorney General was saying that there was not certainly fraud of any magnitude to be a problem for the election. That was not an American thing to do.
We're in uncharted territory here when it comes to this. Do you see something happening down the line, a solution down the line? Not a solution necessarily, but where do you think these hearings will go?
I don't know. I think it's important that the American people know the truth of what has happened. We will see where it all leads. But I'm one who really believes that we need to believe in our institutions. You know, we were very fortunate as a people, Americans, in that the framers gave us this Constitution where peaceful change is possible through elections and our court system. And as my good friend George Shultz used to say, used to wear a tie, it said, democracy is not a spectator sport. And so if we are going to preserve this democracy, we can't just look to those who are in government, those who run for office. Each and every one of us has a responsibility to protect these institutions, to believe in them, to teach about them. I'm a university professor. I worry that my students in a place like Stanford know too little of their institutions and what they mean. And so we had a close call, I think, on January 6th. But I'm confident in the United States, I'm confident in Americans, and I'm confident in those remarkable institutions.
Dr. Rice, it's always great to have a fellow Cleveland Browns fan in the house. Now, you became a Browns fan growing up. You'd watch on Sundays in Alabama with your dad?
My dad was a big Browns fan. You know, it was Jim Brown, it was Paul Brown, Otto Graham, Lou the Toe Groza. And so every Sunday was the Cleveland Browns. And growing up in Birmingham, we didn't have any teams, so you chose the team on TV all the time. It's Cleveland Browns in those days. And so from about age 4, I remember being a Cleveland Browns fan. And I'm not going to say that it was at age 8 that I watched my last Cleveland Browns championship.
That hurts.
Yeah. I'm waiting. It's going to happen. Jimmy and Dee Haslam are friends, and I do believe that the Browns are they're going to give us a championship here pretty soon.
As you know, and I know you've addressed this before, the Deshaun Watson situation with the Browns. As you look at this Deshaun Watson situation with your favorite team, if I can call them your favorite team, the Browns, what do you think?
Well, we all need to keep an open mind and let Judge Robinson do her work. I think she is highly regarded. This is now in the NFL process where it is where it belongs. It was collectively bargained as the process that would be used. Look, it's a serious matter. I think any of us know that these are serious issues that are on the table. But I'm just going to keep an open mind and see where this comes out. I, like everybody, hope it will be resolved soon. But again, I have a lot of confidence in the arbitrator here who's taken the case.
Now, a few years ago, there was talk of you becoming coach of the Cleveland Browns. Was there any truth to that?
There's nothing like getting up on a Sunday morning, because you're on the West Coast, and having a long list of texts that say, "Are you really going to be the Browns coach?" No, I think there were much better qualified people, including Kevin Stefanski, for whom I have a lot of regard. But I did say that if I got to call a play, I would never, ever call a prevent defense under any circumstances. And I think that maybe resonated with Browns fans.
I think you're right. Okay, no coaching job. What about commissioner? Is that something you'd ever consider?
Roger Goodell is a good friend of mine, and as I told him, his job's not so good. You know, it looked pretty good when I was Secretary of State and having to deal with the Iranians and the Russians. Doesn't look so good from Northern California, so I think I'll just be a fan.
Final question, Madam Secretary. Do you miss the job being Secretary of State? Anything about it you miss?
I got my chance, and I was fortunate for 8 years to serve the country, first as National Security Advisor, then as Secretary of State, with a president that I admired, who trusted me at a time of consequence for the country. And we did our best. You know, we made our mistakes. We did a lot that I'm very grateful we were able to do. But when I think back on that fateful day of September 11th, if you had told me that there wouldn't be another attack on the United States, I wouldn't have taken that bet. And so that we were able to, with President Bush's leadership, keep the country safe is something that I'm very grateful for, and it's enough. I've served my time, and now I get to help train the next generation as a professor at Stanford to try to do good policy work as the director of the Hoover Institution, and to live at the first place that ever gave me a real job, Stanford University. And
I saw you playing with Yo-Yo Ma. You jamming with Yo-Yo Ma.
Yes. My mother was a musician. My grandmother, my great-grandmother were all musicians. And so I was destined to be a great concert pianist until I met 12-year-olds who could play from sight, but it had taken me all year to learn, and thought I needed a plan B. But because I kept playing, I've been fortunate to play with Yo-Yo Ma. I got to play for the Queen of England on one occasion. And so piano, in some ways like golf, has been a wonderful way to transport myself from whatever else is going on.
Once again, Madam Secretary, thank you so much. Enjoy your time here in Northeast Ohio.
Thank you very much. It's been great to be here. The people are wonderful, And thank you for having me.
Maybe we'll see you in the dog pound this fall?
Well, I don't know if this fall, but I'll certainly be cheering loudly from one place or another.
Thank you.
Thank you.